Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. We finally finished with Cats, or at least with the Cat Who series, and I've decided to stay off of longer series for a while. I have a few that I'm planning on working through, and I'll probably do those again alternating every couple of weeks when I get around to them, because it's nice to know exactly what book I'm going to be doing next week, because I usually throw myself into a blind panic week after week going, oh, what should I read this week for this? And part of the issue, and I'll get to this book in a moment, part of the issue, of course, is that because this is about reading books that I enjoyed, I don't want to read a book when I really don't feel like reading that book, because then I'll find myself not enjoying it as much, and part of this is enjoying reading. So, Sorcery and Cecelia is a very interesting book, not least of which from its origins, which are actually written up in the back of this particular edition that I have. I don't know if it's in most of these editions. I just know that it is in this one, and I can't recall if it was in the version that I read originally, because this is the second edition that I ever got my hands on. The first one that I ever did was a library book which vanished from the library, and I don't know whether they got rid of it or somebody stole it. I think somebody stole it because it was still in the system, but nobody could find it. In any event, the origin of this story is a very interesting game, which I've never successfully played because I'm a terrible correspondent, but it's called the letter game. There are apparently other names, but for a convenience, we'll call it the letter game, where two people agree to play it, and the first one writes a letter to the second one, in character, establishing who they are, where they are, why they're writing letters, etc. And so Patricia, Wrede and Caroline Stevermer, they got interested in this, and what happened was that they scampered off home, and the first letter that was written was set in a Jane Austen period world, and was written by one cousin to another about the opening of the season, that is the fashionable season, which was a time when rich European socialites would go to a major city. If you were English, then you would be going to London, and they would basically socialize for a season, which was how women and men tracked down spouses. This was when you would have your big presentation ball, which was presenting you to society and declaring that you were now part of the social realm of adults in wealthy society. And these sorts of, and so it was known as the season, capital T, capital S, the season. And so Kate, who is one of these cousins, is on her first season, and Cecelia is stuck at home, unable to go to her first season. And so the letter ostensibly from Kate to Cecelia was the first one sent off, and what happened was these two professional authors got really, really into their game, finished it, and said, hey, look, we have a novel. So they cleaned it up and they sent it to a publisher who published a novel. So Sorcery and Cecelia, or The Enchanted Chocolate Pot, is an epistolary novel, that is, a novel told by the exchange of letters, of these two young women, one of whom is on her first season and the other one is stuck home in Rushton, which is terribly flat. And each of them has a small romance which builds over the course of the book. It's a bit of a mystery because, uh, partly because Kate and Cece and these two gentlemen, um, that Kate and Cece are each respectively involved with one of these two gentlemen. The Marquis of Schofield is who Kate winds up somewhat involved with, and Cecelia, Cece, winds up involved with James Tarleton. And um, part of the reason it's a mystery is because James and Thomas refuse to tell them anything, but as the first time Kate gets involved, she nearly dies from the evil Miranda's machinations. She's rather determined to find out what's going on because she nearly died, and she finds that rather upsetting. And then her cousin Oliver, Cece's brother, gets turned into a tree and then sent away to the Marquis's estate, and she's even more determined to find out what's going on because her family has clearly been pulled into something. Cece, in the meantime, becomes friends with the terrifying Miranda's daughter and is back at home with Sir Hilary Bedrick, who is a villain of sorts, and she, of course, wants to understand what's going on because her cousin is involved in things, and her new friend is involved in things, and James and Thomas are actively refusing to tell these women what's going on. And so part of the mystery is not really a mystery in the traditional sense. It's a, would you please explain what's happening? And indeed, several times the pair of them do things that ruin James and Thomas's plan, in part because since they won't tell the two girls what's happening, the two young women have to make assumptions based on what they do know, and so they wind up involved in this. And the chocolate pot refers to a device because this is a fantasy novel, and it is Thomas's magical focus. That is, in this universe, as constructed by Wrede and Stevermer, a person who is a magician can create a magical focus that is a little bit like a wand in Harry Potter, that you run your magic through it and it causes your magic to be more focused and allows you to do more and bigger and better things. But it is, unlike in Harry Potter, where it seems to be something of an essential to have a focus, in this universe it's more like, as they put it in the book, needing eyeglasses, that some people can see perfectly fine without them, and others need them, but I myself wear glasses, and I can't see more than a foot past my face with any clarity, but yes, if I'm walking down the street not wearing my glasses, I can indeed see an oncoming car. So it's a little more comparable to glasses than to a Harry Potter wand. The magic in this bears some resemblance to Patricia Reedy's other pair of novels, the Magic and Malice duology, which is set in a similar time frame, and is two books that I will be getting around to as well. And the thing about this is, there is a romance in it, but it's not an important thread. In fact, it's very much happening in the background. You pick up on bits of it as you go, but what happens is that Kate just expresses a certain amount of jealousy at certain times, and then when she discovers that Thomas was not in fact interested in the person she thought he was interested in, that she's relieved, and at the end of the book he proposes, and uh, Cece Cece winds up falling in love with and getting married to. If the screen went black, that's because I haven't been moving my mouse around, and so my screensaver came on, or rather, the screen went to sleep. Um, so, anyhow, one of the things that I enjoy about this is that I would not call this Jane Austen. There are shades of Austen style writing in it, of writing that is like unto that period, but this is aimed at a slightly younger audience. Um, I, I mean, if what you're looking for is a rollicking, good, fun, light, fluffy read, I can absolutely say that adults could enjoy this. What I particularly enjoy in this, among other things, is that it's a very funny book. As are the other two books in this trilogy, which I will be doing 3 in a row. Such as one of my favorite moments. Cece, I do think it is unfair. People in novels are fainting all the time, and I never can, no matter how badly I need to. Instead, I stared at him for what seemed like years with the stupidest expression on my face, I'm sure, because I felt stupid. For I couldn't imagine why he should say such an extraordinary thing. Finally, I realized he was waiting for me to say something. I said, I can't imagine why you should say such an extraordinary thing. This is based on Thomas proposing marriage to her. This is actually maybe a third of the way into the book, because he's not proposing marriage to her because he is desperately in love with her, but because he needs to find a marriage partner who will not misunderstand and will agree to jilt him at the end of the season. In effect, Miranda has cast a spell on her daughter such that anyone who meets her daughter will instantly believe himself madly in love with Dorothea. And so Thomas decides that he needs an excuse to avoid running off with Dorothea, and being engaged to another woman will hopefully act as a restraint upon him. Because even though he knows Dorothea has this spell on her, he's concerned that it may overwhelm him nonetheless. It turns out that it doesn't, but he certainly leaves Kate convinced that it does, which is one of the reasons why she does a thing that ruins his plan. However, because he didn't warn her that he was going to be pretending to be in love with Dorothea, and didn't tell her, no, I'm not really, obviously Kate thought that he was, because he had been acting like it. This is another example of, well, if you just told people, maybe they wouldn't ruin your plans because they would know what your plans are and make allowance for them. I very, very much enjoy the grand finale of this book, because Kate has been much put upon by her Aunt Charlotte while she was in town. Both Kate and Cece's mothers have died, and Kate's primary female guardian is her Aunt Charlotte. And Kate, who has put up with a great deal from this woman, finally, when Thomas asks her to go driving and Aunt Charlotte says, I have not given you leave to go, Kate just sort of snaps and sets off on her. Catherine Talgarth, do you presume to tell me how to look after Georgina? Well, yes, Aunt Charlotte, I must, particularly since she's learned to play Silverloo and shows every sign of turning as reckless a gamester as grandfather, despite your chaperonage. And you've let her pick up the most dreadful sport in Kent, Aunt Charlotte, I added. Another thing you should know, that goat of Squire Bryant's, well, it was all Georgie's idea. And leads up to this beautiful finale of, and moreover, I informed Aunt Charlotte, Papa always referred to you as that interfering harpy. Come away, Kate, says Thomas. Come away and tell me all about Squire Bryant's goat before you give your aunt an apoplexy. And that's very close to the end of the book. So, if you think you'll enjoy it, you should probably look it up. As always, the description will have publication and author information. And I guess that's everything, so I'll see you all next week.